For young people, school is more than just a classroom. It means stability, structure, and it's a place where you start to dream of who you can become. But Hurricane Melissa disrupted all of that, on top of years of interruptions from COVID-19, economic strain, or even previous hurricanes and storms. Today on Common Ground, we're asking a very important question. What does returning to school mean for the average everyday young person, from the academic side to the financial side or even the emotional side? So I'm your host, Danielle Mullings. Let's go find Common Ground.
To understand what returning to school really means, we traveled across the island listening directly to young people. We wanted to understand the heart of it. What does school truly mean to them? And how has this disruption shaped their lives?
I remember when Hurricane Melissa came and I said to Mommy, why my life have to be so hard? COVID, no this. I was just scared. I felt like every time there's a milestone in my life, there is something that just comes and it just pushes it over.
School personally is basically my second home. I have dormed here, I've been here for late nights, many days, and it's basically my second home.
I believe education is crucial to everybody, not just young people. I believe education is the ability to advance yourself in anything that you're doing. So whether you're cooking, whether you're cleaning, whether you're playing a sport, or you're doing bookwork, education is crucial because education is advancement. It's the ability to learn new things, to apply them, and to make yourself better, to build up, to build your family, to build your friends, and build all those around you.
Well, school is a place where we all come to learn, but I think that's a typical definition that we ask students why they come to school. But school is more than that. It's more of building network, building connection, building friends, getting our name out there so people can know who we are representing our school internationally, regionally, or wherever it is. So I can say school is good.
For many students, returning to school wasn't just about lessons. It was about reconnecting, finding rhythm again, and stepping back into spaces that felt familiar.
Coming back to school was like a little sense of home. I really wanted to leave home because it was kind of traumatizing to see that a place where once was home is now kind of gone. But coming to school reassured me that, things can be better. Things can go back to normal. And I was happy to see my friends who I haven't heard from, or to see that person who were looking out for me. Because without service or light, I was not connected to the world.
Coming to school, it's kind of brought back a sense of normalcy and getting to see friends around and getting to go back into, your own space and in the routine of things has brought a little bit of comfort and a little bit of, everything is going to be okay. We're just going to have to make it through this.
We've been at school for about 3 weeks now. It has been a phased reopening, so they targeted the exam set first. So I'm in sixth form, my last year. We attend school for 3 days out of the week. We were excited to leave where we're coming from. A lot of our communities had suffered a lot of damage. So it was exciting for that change of environment.
Being back in school as well, it really causes me to be more focused, understanding that these are very crucial moments. So I have to be very careful with every step that I take. And to be honest, I like the company of schoolmates. I was just excited to see everybody, to be honest. More than anything else, I was just glad to see my fellow schoolmates and so forth. And the teachers, a lot of the teachers would have lost their homes, but to see that they were at school even on the cleanup days, I'm very proud of my teachers.
My 5th and 6th form colleagues are experiencing that they've lost everything. They've lost SBAs or textbooks. Fees for CAPE and CSEC is supposed to be paid at this time, and the fact that they're going through such a colossal loss, and it's such a really crucial time in our education. We're supposed to be studying and preparing for external exams.
The past few weeks have been a mix of stress, resilience, and happiness. Stress in the sense that we had to return to school and we knew that we had a lot to catch up on. Resilience in the sense that it took a lot for us to return here, not just us, but our teachers also, who are also impacted by the hurricane. But in the mix of the negatives, we do have a positive because there was also happiness. I got the opportunity to interact with my friends and also my teachers. My classmates, they too are here. They too would have undergone damages from the hurricane. Some lost their entire home, and yet they're here. But I think that the fact that we're in a physical space where we get to interact and to share experiences and receive encouragements from those around us is really our motivation to really come back here.
I was like, okay, I have CAPE in the next few months. I'm supposed to have a test. I'm supposed to have exams. So when exactly is school going to start? When are we going to start to feel that normalcy again?
For this generation, disruption hasn't been one moment. It's been a pattern.
I experienced COVID in first form, burial during the ending of high school, and Melissa during my first year of college. I would unsubscribe if I have to.
A lot of the older ones would say that we don't have issues as young people, but we generally face peer pressures and other pressures, and I just wish that they all understood that everything that goes on in the world does affect our mental state.
So I go to Westwood, and as most persons would have seen and heard, most of the buildings are damaged, the auditorium especially, it is completely gone. And for me, seeing this place that I would also to call my second home, being school, being destroyed, I would have been a COVID student, as they would say, so transitioning to high school, dealing with COVID, having to be out of school for so long, and now having to readjust because of this hurricane. It again has left a really negative impact on me as a student because I'm not able to study as easily because there's no water, there's no light. I'm not able to go to school because there's so much damage, and just having to readjust again because of this hurricane, it's just really hard for me.
School has played a part because it has become a distraction because you're not on social media seeing all of the devastation. So honestly, it has been a distraction for it. So being around my friends knowing that they're okay, because when we were all out of electricity, I was a bit worried because you don't know if your friends are okay, you don't know how other parts of the parish was. So it was good to know that school could resume. And honestly, I've taken school for granted before, but seeing the others that they can't go, I've honestly become very grateful for school.
When I was in Clarendon, I realized that I was at a family member's home, and in the background, I could hear children playing at school. You know, all that joy and excitement, and when I'm here, I don't hear nothing going on. So I reflected on that to realize that, hey, even though things here in the West stop, things are still going on elsewhere. And to see that my school realizes this and are pushing forward, you know, I'm very glad to see this.
I have the opportunity to be here in a physical space, and others don't have this opportunity. It is truly grieving. I wish I could do so much for them, that to know that they would be in their school for a shelter, don't have a home to go back to. It is a lot to think about and is a lot to dwell on as a young person. When I look into the future, it really changed how you look at things. You can't take things for granted, so it really left a little impact on me.
My school, Petersfield High, is currently being used as a shelter right now. I have been out of school for since the start, to be honest. As the student council president of my school, my job is to ensure that I'm accommodating students' psychological well-being and emotions. And this hurricane has really slowed down a lot of channels to do so. I'm just waiting until the end of this month, which the shelter will be closing.
As student council president, I try to make it a point of my duty to kind of get a feel of how everybody is feeling. So I've reached out to a number of students, and not everybody's in the position to come to school at the moment. So it kind of rose a conflict with me and my executives as to what's going to happen. I mean, I'm really nervous about it because even I myself don't necessarily have the facilities to facilitate everyday learning. And I know the school doesn't have the facilities either because Herbert Morrison did take on a lot of damage.
But this isn't just about a storm or a school semester. It's about how students keep showing up, even when life keeps interrupting them.
It's been a lot of mixed feelings. It's been happiness to come back into the learning environment. It's been sadness because I've seen so much destruction, but I'm happy to be here ultimately because, as you can see, school might have been damaged, but we're a resilient group of people and we're ready to learn, to get back into the learning space, to get back socializing, to be ready to get back out there in the world again, because the world continues spinning, even though we are damaged here.
2 days before school officially reopened, our exam groups met at school in the auditorium, and we had sessions led by our guidance department on basically seeing where we are mentally, seeing if we're ready to get back to school. And I would love for other schools who are affected to have that same kind of program to see if the students are mentally prepared to come back. I would not expect students to come back to class and perform normally given the circumstances. Not everybody can bounce back as quick. So I would definitely encourage schools to have that sort of program in place for their students upon returning.
I think they need a numerous amount of support, whether it's through like donations or just getting into therapy or talking to people who they can relate to, because although you have the others that are helping from other parishes, they're probably going to feel like they don't understand. So giving support from those who they can relate to would be a good thing. So it can be a connection program where they all come together and sit and talk and share the experiences.
Honestly, I know for sure, I cannot speak on the behalf of no one else, but I know for sure I will be going back to school, and I will try my best to encourage others to do so also, because a lot of students do not have much time left in school, especially like grade 10 and grade 11.
It's now forcing students to kind of rebuild in their minds how is it that they learn. We're now forced to learn a different way. We have to go to school without uniforms. We have to kind of have an understanding that teaching and learning is totally different.
I feel like our generation has to work 10 times harder to combat these type of stuff, and I think it kind of takes away a little bit of our childhood and our teenage experience and our high school experience.
Saying my mother said, we use every setback as a set up to come back. So this is just a stepping stone in our journey. So whatever the case may be, we have hope, and once we have hope, we have a dream for the future. So we should hold fast to that hope.
Unity equals strength. If we are divided, we are weak. So be united, love one another, understand that the life of a person is similar to the leaf on this tree right now. You see, if you pick it, you will look at, before you even pick it, you look at the leaf and it looks so green and nice, right? But in a moment, this leaf, I just picked it and it falls on the ground and it will begin to dry out. And that's the very same way how each of our lives are. And it won't matter how tall on the tree you are, just like all the other leaves. When you are falling off that tree, your life can dry out in the blink of an eye.
The students, though they might feel a bit unmotivated or depressed, some of them are without homes, the spirit that's within Jamaica is a very resilient one. So we're going to get back up. The future is still bright. We're little, but we're talawa.
I'll tell them to keep hope, keep strong, hold the faith, because it is a terrible time, we know that, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel. People are there to help you. You will get help. Just stay strong, try to hold out for those around you, and better will come.
It's been a long journey for this year, I would say class of 2025 and such, because we've gone through COVID, burial Melissa, we've had a lot of setbacks. I feel like we're probably one of the more unfortunate ones as it pertains to having a stable high school life. But I feel like it's made us more resilient, and I can say it's maybe more appreciative for the things I have in life. We should all be able to learn, but it is a privilege because a lot of persons don't have the opportunity.
The students that I have spoken to personally feel as if they will be left behind as a result, because they would have just came from midterm. They're still a bit rusty with all of the content that they would have had in their minds, and then they just had this freak storm of a hurricane just come hit everywhere in the western region, and then to miss at least 2 to 3 weeks of school. What they feel is that we are in a constant state of loss, especially in terms of things like education and improving things like the overall economic development. So they feel as if the country is being in a state of being set back, and they themselves feel as if the government needs to do a bit more in terms of how we can support youth in global crises like these, include youth into discussions that actually impact them. For example, the passing of this hurricane, many
policymakers, for example, all of the persons coordinate all of these relief drives, these restoration projects, they may not feel urged to include youth, but it is really important because it is youth who will drive the future. So my suggestion to these policymakers is to include youth as much as possible, because at the end of the day, the decisions that are made for youth will directly impact us.
To the Ministry of Education, and I want to say more specifically the universities, at this time their applications are open, and I would want for them to extend the application period so that the people in the West, the students in the West, can get back to a state of normalcy.
Welcome back to Common Ground. Now, we've spent the first half of this episode hearing from young people about their experiences in education post-Melissa. Now we're going to be asking the question of how do we rebuild and really rebuild our education system in a period of crisis even better than before. So joining me, we have two lovely guests, two very young guests as well. We have Dr. Anne-Marie Wilmot. She is a lecturer of educational leadership and also the head of the Caribbean Center for Educational Planning. And then we also have Mr. Jamar Johnson. He's an educational psychologist and behavior analyst who works a lot with students and teachers. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to jump right into the conversation. Mm-hmm. Right. And so, Dr. Wilmot, you know, earlier in this episode, we were hearing from young people about how school is more than a place for, you know, just to come and do classes and learn about maths and English and so on. Yes. It's also a space to feel supported. You start to build those social relationships and you know, maybe somewhere you come for food even. So you've written about schools as critical social infrastructure, not just academic spaces. And I really want to hear from you now. Firstly, what does that mean to break down for the audience? And two, what does rebuilding that function of school look like, that social infrastructure?
Thanks for asking, Danielle. It's really an important question that you ask. For many students, who particularly those from disadvantaged backgrounds, school is really an anchor for them. It's not just about the math and the English. School is a place where they build relationships, but school sometimes is that space of escape from home, where they have experiences that, you know, young children or teenage shouldn't be experiencing. And sometimes school is the place that provides their meal, and sometimes the only meal that some of these children get. That school is the space. So the displacement of schools really puts young children and teenagers, it's just school-age children, at a severe disadvantage, particularly those who are at risk.
So a lot of important themes are coming out, especially for those young children who are disadvantaged. Now, let's move a little bit into the behavioral and emotional side of things. You know, Jamar, for us, young people said we're feeling all sorts of this mix of fear and sometimes even panic or difficulty concentrating. So from a behavioral and emotional perspective, you know, what are some of the things that maybe teachers should be looking out for now as we return to class?
Very good question. And I think it's important that we have the conversation so that we are able to forecast what to possibly expect and how to navigate that. Some of the behaviors that we will more likely see is increased irritability, right? And so very often students will become irritable for the very simplest of things, or what may be deemed simple. You may see also a lot of withdrawal, not engaging much with peers, not communicating much in class, and now is not the time to beat them about not necessarily participating in class, right? Because there may be several things happening psychologically that they have to navigate. There may even be tendencies of aggression. And so you want to be very careful as to how you navigate that. I think one of the technologies, if you will, for navigating that is separating behavior from identity. You know, so it's a very simple method formula that says what I do is not who I am. And so you have to be very careful with that post-trauma, because trauma has a way of influencing behavior, and you want to be very careful to separate that so you're able to navigate it as best as possible.
No, really interesting points coming up there, and separating the identity from the behavior, recognizing that we're all going through a very difficult time after this hurricane. And I'm going to give you a quick follow-up question on that. We do talk a lot about, how we support students safely, but teachers are also recovering. We have it's not just the students alone that have been impacted. So from the teacher standpoint, do you think there's, also some psychology that we should be paying attention to?
I think the same could apply. Especially the irritability piece, because trauma is trauma right across the board, whether it be children or adults. It's just that we navigate it differently, right? And so you may have increased irritability. You may have teachers feeling like, I really just don't want to do this today. And it's not like a regular, I don't want to go to work today. It's a severe fatigue that I don't have the energy to take on all that it means to be a teacher today, right? You may also see increased aggression, and that may come out in forms of shouting or, not being very mindful of what you say or how you navigate situations. And so these are also triggers that you may want to look for, and find support systems that help you to ground yourself, or even to ground your colleagues, because it helps.
Okay. So as we continue then to speak about teachers, I want to go back to you, Dr. Wilmot, because you've done a lot of research on sort of the organizational bit of schools and leadership. And so in some of your research, I saw that you said during COVID-19, teachers and middle leaders were making a lot of decisions on the fly, and sometimes more effectively than top-down structures. So you mentioned a lot about, this need for teacher agency, collaboration, and distributed leadership, especially during a crisis. So how can we empower our teachers now and middle leaders now, especially in parishes where maybe principals are overwhelmed and the needs are huge?
That's an interesting question, because it's a very difficult time now, for the country and for the education system. And when I wrote about the COVID experience, there was a kind of trauma, but the wide-scale displacement that is currently that prevails now, that wasn't the case. People had electricity, they had their homes, they had Wi-Fi, they had food, they just weren't at risk. Now, everyone is exposed, teachers and students alike. And so I feel that perhaps we have to, in terms of addressing what we could do now, I think that in the same way, we have to attend to the socio-emotional needs of students. We have to do the same for teachers, and we have to do the same for our principals as well. I always ask the question, who's watching the watcher? The principals make these decisions, but they have this overall responsibility. So I think that every single stakeholder at this point needs some support. So if we're thinking about what we can do now, perhaps we could begin with teachers and school leaders who are least impacted, where the impact is not as great as others, and then see how they could assist others. But if we're thinking about what we can do in the future, we have to think about how we handle traumas within our institution. And we have to begin to empower not only school leaders, but teachers, heads of departments, and so to have these conversations and to understand how to respond. So, for example, if students turn up to school and they're not in their uniform, it means that these students, they want to be there. So what are you going to do? Will you turn these students away just because they do not have a uniform? Or are you going to open the school as the space that the student found that was, could be most beneficial in this particular time?
Thank you so much, Dr. Wilmot.
Yes,
I think both of you are bringing out this need to ensure that we, look at how we're addressing the trauma needs and recognizing that we're not just returning to education or returning to class, but it's also how do you restart your life, really? And that includes other aspects. So we're going to continue to talk about this and also now look at a bit of what does a real crisis management framework look like, or suggestions that are coming from our educators and our students, and when we come back after the break. So stay with us, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay.
This is Common Ground and we're discussing education. We'll be right back with you after the break. Welcome back to Common Ground. I'm your host, Danielle Mullings, and we're joined by two amazing guests here on set. We have Dr. Wilmot and, of course, Mr. Jamar Johnson. We're diving into how Jamaica can rebuild education post-Melissa. Now, I'm going to give a question to you, Jamar, and this one actually comes from a teacher. His name is Ken Loy, and he's a teacher in Black River, a young person just like us.
He's my friend.
And he's your friend. Okay, great. So he says, more school days aren't the solution. We need to look at how we can actually promote learning itself. And he has suggested that we may need community tutoring, reading assistance. We need retired teachers to come back, heart trainees, a national homework network maybe. You know, from that, how do you think a community-powered model could help us catch up with some of the learning loss and even kind of mitigate some of the burnout that teachers may be facing?
It's actually an excellent suggestion, and it works. And interestingly, we would have applied it in COVID, but I don't think anybody paid attention. For example, I know of about 3 persons on TikTok who literally just went on TikTok during that period and just taught math, social studies, whatever it was, and it worked. There've even been stories of people who would have been going back to school for CXCs or whatever the case may be, and it helped them. And so I think it applied. And it worked well. One of the things that does, it brings back value to education beyond the upward mobility. You know, it shows the importance of community in education, and it shows the importance of pulling together all resources and not just formal instruction, but informal instruction and how that helps. And so it's actually an excellent idea. Of course, we would have to be very careful to navigate it carefully.
Right.
You know, ensuring that all the structures and policies are in place. And I think it could help. I really think it could.
So as we speak a bit then about those structures and policies that need to be in place, Dr. Wilmot, when we spoke, you mentioned that, you know, there's a need to decentralize some of our crisis response. There's also the need for a more comprehensive school safety plan that can respond to different types of crises. Can you tell us about that and also, you know, where it's coming from in your research?
Thanks for that. I just want to acknowledge the work that the ministry is doing in terms of responding to this crisis. And the fact that we have a school safety plan is really good, and it's a great place from which we can begin. But there is a need really to have, and I think that the ministry might be currently working on education in emergency plan to have a national plan. And the research work that I did found that there is need for that, and not only to have a national plan, but have one where you have templates where the response is contextual, because crisis response is very important. You have to, so you need people who are on the ground, who understand exactly what is happening in this corner, and so that responses are not one size fit all, and that is
so what
important.
kind of templates could we have?
So, for example, there is. We don't all experience crisis response the same, and we would want to make sure that plans are in place prior to an occurrence. So the templates would have different scenarios, likely scenarios and responses.
Like
how we
earthquake.
communicate. If there's an earthquake, what do you do? If there is fire, what do you do? In this case, what do you do when, for example, learning is at risk? How do you... Who responds? Who sets the triggers off? And so what that would do is initiate the need for immediate response. Now, one of the one of the principles of the plan is that we want to make sure that after safety, we begin addressing the socio-emotional aspects of students, because if we do not do that, we are not preparing them to learn further. And so even though they're in school, learning loss will still take place because they are not prepared, they're not fully prepared to learn. So in that case, we'd know exactly what are the first steps to initiate in these instances.
All right. So you're
additionally, I just want to say that that plan would have to also focus on capacity building, because it is important. It's not only important that Danielle knows that she's responsible for these teachers, but what does that responsibility look like? What skills and competencies, yes, would you need to have to execute these roles? So implementation, a kind of built-in implementation is important with a template that is flexible to allow people to act according to their context. Yeah.
I think that's very interesting and something that will be important for us to have as a country, because it's not only hurricanes that will impact us.
All right.
Earthquakes are there, flooding, or when we have periods of intense rainfall, there are a number of different issues that can affect the education system and even other systems as well. So I like that idea of a flexible template that is also, looking at what capacity is needed and has to be built. So let's build on that a bit. Going back over to you, Jamar. You've done a lot of work with special education, right? So special education needs. So what additional supports do you think that community will need to also re-engage?
I think in order to establish or to figure out the kind of support that we need, we have to start asking the right questions.
Okay. What are those questions, Jamar?
And it could simply start with, for example, instead of assuming the need, you go and ask them, what exactly do you need right now? We were talking about it before we came on air. We're talking about how it is that we're going about responding to trauma without doing a needs assessment.
Right.
So it's important that we have conversation with these stakeholders to say, hey, where are the gaps? What are the gaps? Could you describe them? How could I help you to plug this gap? What does that look like? Are there any community members that you're not able to reach?
Right.
And then you have to have the conversation of equality versus equity, because the model that we're using now is we're packaging everything and we're handing it out to people. But we spoke about earlier how after a while, if you give me bread every week, me I gonna have bread stack and pile, right? And so equality is not equity. Equity deals with I need to meet you where you are.
Right.
And in order for me to meet you where you are, especially in the special education arena, you have to do an assessment, right? So a simple thing as making psychoeducational assessment accessible again.
Okay.
Beyond the centers that offer it. The rural areas need psychoeducational assessments, right? Not just to assess learning disabilities, but learning loss and learning difficulties. That's a need. And that's where you're going to get other findings to support our work.
All right. Thank you so much, Jamar. And I think now, as we look to kind of wrap up, I want to look at how should Jamaica redefine success for students in 2026 and beyond, given where we are now. And I'll start with you, Dr. Wilmot. It's a big question, I know.
Yes.
But how can we start to break it down?
It's an interesting question, and it's difficult, but it's a conversation that we need to have. My own sense is that success has to look like a student who has some kind of balance, not one who has exposure and who has learned educationally, but one who is also so socially adjusted and can move forward with whatever he or she desires in life. I think that is what success looks like. And one principle of planning is that once safety is assured, socio-emotional support is critical for students to move forward. So once we address that,
then we're good.
Yes, and we have to develop the capacity to be able to more definitively calculate learning loss, and again the one size fit all template will not work, because even within organizations, learning loss will vary depending on the socioeconomic of the students' background and their personal resilience, and so there's so many factors that the kind of support that the school has. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wilmot. And Jamar, if you can give me in 30 seconds your response to how should Jamaica redefine success for students in 2026?
I am going to say we need to reframe how we look at assessment. I learned a principle some time ago: assessment for learning and assessment of learning. We have been using the assessment of learning model. So, you know, how much CXCs you get and can it get you to university and that kind of a thing. But we have not been using assessment to inform how we teach. And especially post Melissa, we need to do assessment for learning. So we see what's here and we know how to structure, modify, accommodate, or learning or plans or curricula, whatever it is, to fit the needs of the students in front of us. I think that's the easiest way. And also to ensure that there's trauma-informed teaching and trauma-informed leadership.
So thank you to our lovely guests, Jamar Johnson and Dr. Anne-Marie Wilmot. We've really had an interesting discussion here, trying to find the common ground between crisis and continuing education. Now, it's clear that rebuilding our education system will take all of us: teachers, students, parents, the community, every single person. It's a hands-on deck situation. Stay with us. To close off the show, we have our usual messages of hope and encouragement from young Jamaicans across the island. I'm Danielle Mullings, and this is Common Ground.
Have compassion to those that were affected. You know, progress takes time, rebuilding takes time, and there's a lot of effort that has to go into it. You know, success doesn't come overnight, so we have to work with each other, be mindful of everyone in their situation, and to not discriminate. Just be kind.
Going into 2026, what I can say to Jamaica is that we will rebuild. We are strong. We are the strongest country I've ever seen. So rebuilding, we rebuild together. We rebuild with unity. So I know that we don't have much to worry about, but we have a lot to think about. So as a young person, what I can say, we little, but we talawa. So we shall stay strong.
We can do this. We will build back better, stronger, and, you know, come back better than before. You know, we little, we talawa.
Together we are resilient, and I hope that we continue to embody that spirit of resilience. With God in our vessel, we can smile at any storm.
My message, or what I would leave with everybody going into 2026, is that whatever you're going through, whatever life throws your way, it's always rebrand, rebuild, and reinvent yourself and anything that you have around you.
I would encourage them as much as I can to come to school, whether it's only 3 days out of the week, if it's possible. But it's very important to be at school, especially in this time.
We excel in terms of who we are as people. We are kind, we're caring, we are the Manning's family. It's a family of us, and we are loving to each other. And in everything that we do, we embody goodness, greatness, and kindness. The Manning's way.